Hello everyone and welcome to Project Heart for God, H4G for short. Welcome back for those of you who have been with us for quite some time. And those of you guys who are new, welcome to my channel. On this channel we discuss all things faith-based. Nothing is off the limits, and the goal of this is all to just give glory and honor back unto God and to be able to be used for His glory at the end of the day. Today's message, we're going to jump right into it, and just want to start with a question. And think my ask for you as you're going through this video is just essentially to give us the first reaction that comes up when you hear these questions that I have here. Okay, so first question I've got for you guys here is, what would you do if God told you to work for 6 years and then rest and take a sabbatical for 1 year? I'm gonna pause and let that sink in a moment. So if you're working, and that vocation may be either you're going to school, right? Or you are, working whatever job you have. You've been working for 6 years, and God's telling you, okay, you worked 6 years, and then on the 7th year, I'm gonna need you to take a sabbatical. All right? What would you do then? Our initial reaction for some of us would probably be to think that God was joking. Ha 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 ha, God, like 6 years, take a year off, just how? How, Lord, how? But when we realize that He wasn't, that laughter would soon probably turn to worry. Now let me add on to that question a little bit with another question. Here's a follow-up. What if God told you that you need not worry, because in the 6th year, He's going to bless you with so much, to just say financially, so much money, that you would be set for not only the 7th year that He told you not to work, but in the 8th and the 9th year as well. It's kind of sweetening the deal a little bit now, right? How would you respond now? So for some of you, you might say yes and find it comforting, that God's got me for, year 6, 7, and 8. But some of you, someone else, might continue to hesitate to the point of worrying past anxiety. The difference between these two, beloved, that I want to share here is just the level of trust in the promises of God to provide. And that's exactly what I want us to be able to discuss today, essentially the promises of God to provide. So our reading today, we're going to jump on over to Leviticus chapter 25, verse 3 to 5, and then continuing, I'm going to skip on down to the verse 20 to 22. And just for time's sake, I'm going to jump right into that. So Leviticus chapter 25, verse 3 to 5, the word of the Lord reads, "For 6 years you shall sow your field, and for 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather in its fruits. But in the 7th year there shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath to the Lord. You shall not grow your field or prune your vineyard. You shall not reap what grows of itself in your harvest, or gather the grapes of your undressed vine. It shall be a year of solemn rest for the land." Skipping on down to the verse 20, all right? So the verse 20 says, "And if you say, 'What shall we eat in the 7th year, if we may not sow or gather in our crop?' I being the Lord, will command my blessing on you in the 6th year, so that it will produce crop sufficient for 3 years. When you sow in the 8th year, you will be eating some of the old crop. You shall not eat the old until the 9th year, when the crop arrives." This is the word of the Lord. In order for us to kind of have an appreciation for just what happened here, I think context is certainly needed. And a little bit of context here is that the people that God is speaking to here in Leviticus chapter 25 are the Israelites. And the Israelites, God's chosen people to be able to work through and just have his glory be made known through and at that point in time. And we gotta have an understanding of, where these Israelites are really coming from, in order to have that sort of appreciation for how they perhaps perceived this information that was given to them by God through Moses, right? So these Israelites, they were living in Egypt, and at a time when, there were basically slaves, indentured servants, slaves, if you will, in Egypt. And they were working and working, but at least they knew that, hey, at the end of the day, they're guaranteed whatever food that they may get. May not be the most appealing, but they've got something. And then one day their whole life gets turned upside down, where they meet this God who says, "You will be my people and I will be your God." And they follow this man called Moses into the wilderness to go and worship this God that they are just recently getting to know a little bit, right? So, of course, they're probably excited that they get to finally leave being slaves in Egypt to be promised to be able to go into a new land where they're hoping to be able to prosper. So they're probably thinking, hey, I finally have a chance to get my family out of this financial situation. I finally have a chance to build for my family, for my friends around me in this community. And so they probably got some big dreams, they probably got some big hopes, right? That they are ready to work, because that's what they've known while they were slaves in Egypt. So to be told, you gotta put, so to be told, hey, if you're in the agriculture sector, right, it's fine for you to, keep growing and growing your crops for 6 years. However, in that 7th year, I'm gonna need you to take a pause. To be told that from God, especially a God who you have recently met and you're still trying to figure out, but you're never gonna be able to figure out, by the way. Still trying to figure out and just get to know. To be told that by God is a tough pill to swallow. So some of them may have been excited to hear this. Others, perhaps not so much. And the funny thing, every time when we study the Israelites, at least to me, is that we often forget how what they went through so long ago is human behavior and is things that have not done away with time. And what I'm trying to say is that we as well experience this, we as well go through this too. When we hear this from God, work 6 years and rest a year, our reaction is similar to what they went through thousands of years ago. And so that's why today's message is trusting in the promises and the providences of God. One thing that I want to point out about trust, and we'll kind of dig a little bit deeper because we want to spend time on this. It's so key. One thing I want to harp on there is that trust, sometimes it's compartmentalized unconsciously. What do I mean by we compartmentalize trust unconsciously? We trust God with our salvation, right? We trust that we're saved. We accepted Jesus Christ as our personal Lord and Savior. We trust Him perhaps with our dreams. But there are some areas of our lives, if we'll admit to ourselves, that we struggle to believe in God's ability and God's providence to provide. Whatever area of your life that may be, only you know. I'm sure you're probably thinking about what that is at this particular moment. So let's unpack that a little bit more, right? Some things that we do some of them consciously and others unconsciously, right? This is kind of set up in our hearts that for some people it's easier to trust God with certain things than it is for others. And that's based on just so many things, but a couple of them that I want to unpack as to why we struggle to trust in God and why we struggle to trust in God with all of our hearts, with all of our desires and hopes and wants, is that for some of us, we spent so much of our lives depending solely on ourselves. Especially for some of you guys who may have just joined the faith recently. Perhaps you may be a new believer. You've spent your entire life with the understanding of, I'm doing, I gotta grind, I gotta work it, I gotta make sure that I hustle and bustle and just keep things moving for me, right? So to be told, hey, move from trusting on yourself and move to trusting in a God that you've recently met, that can be quite daunting. We also struggle because we hate the feeling of not being in control. For after being in control or perceived control for so much time of our lives, we believe in our ability. For some, we believe in our ability to handle the situation better than how God would. And if I could say this for the people in the back, right? I believe this is where a lot of old believers who've been walking with God for quite some time perhaps may be, because we've gone through so many challenges where we probably think, hey, I could have probably done that better, right? Even though we realize and we ultimately know that God's the one who does everything in the best way for our good, right? One of the biggest things that I want to point out, especially in our time together in this video, is that many of us struggle to put our trust in God, or many of us compartmentalized our trust in God because we are experiencing somewhat of an identity crisis. For many of us, especially those of us in the corporate world, our identity is in part heavily influenced by our work. The thought of putting that aside for even a period of time, if asked to by God, is frightening. It's frightening because it's all we have perhaps ever known. It's frightening because, we may complain about our jobs, all the time. I've complained about my job several times before in the past. But when we really take a step back and ask ourselves, why are we still in this space? One of the reasons that is unpopular for us to admit to ourselves is because we may find some sort of comfort in it. And for some of us, if we can be real, we get a sense of validation from our jobs that we don't often feel or listen to or hear well, the validation that we receive from God and from His Word. By the way, God validates His love for us so deeply in His Word. But that's a message for another day. So just really quickly to close, I want to kind of talk about some of the things to be able to fix this, right? How do we address this? Because if God were to tell us to take a break, if God were to tell us anything, whatever commandment He gives us, as believers, we want to be able to work and we want to be able to be in a spot we want to be able to be in a position of obedience to His Word. So point one that I just noted here as far as addressing this is that recognize that God's ways are perfect and that He gives better gifts than what we can ever give ourselves or even to others. Recognizing this is so important because it helps us realize that if God gave us direction, then that direction is obviously to lead us to the place and the path that He has called us to be able to accomplish the purposes that He has set forth before us, right? And the second part is to truly consider what matters in eternity. May we have an eternity mindset, because we have an eternity mindset when God says go, when God says pause, when God says rest, my child, you will rest in Him. Because you'll realize that even the back and forth every day, even with school and everything, that although all those things are wonderful and good, and God, please don't get me wrong here, God created work, and work is good, and work is necessary, and there's purpose in work. But there must be a balance, that when we get to a position where our work has become our lives, our work has become, dare I say, our God, we need to take a step back and really seek God in His direction and what He wants us to do. Because it ought not to be so. God commands rest for us. Rest does not make us weak. Rest is essentially when things grow. Perhaps God may be calling you to a year off to refocus and be better grounded in Him. Perhaps to direct you to a different occupation. Perhaps to shift your focus, to focus on your family and friends if you're somebody that tends to overwork, work a ton. There's so many reasons why God may be calling us, myself included, to do something, but we will never know why nor the outcome until we actually do it. So, beloved, I end this just by asking, what might God be calling you to take a break from, focus on, or trust in Him on in this season of your life? Whatever that is, I encourage you to seek God diligently and make the jump. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Hope you found this message to be helpful for you. As I was going through this message, I was going through the Word, getting to Leviticus, this point just stuck out to me so much as something that I'm working through and dealing with in my own life as well. Learning to find rest in God when He commands and calls me to. So I hope you too will be able to journey with Him and just walk with God and be obedient to Him in that way as well. I'll leave you guys with this as always, in that may you and I strive tirelessly to be a blessing to the body of Christ. I love you guys and hope to see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.